So this panel session is being live streamed, so where there are question and answers, we'll have roving microphones. I would ask that you turn off any mobile phones or put them to silent, please. And I would like to introduce Alison Caldwell from the Next Generation Tech Fund to come up and introduce the next panel speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so welcome to the Grand Challenges panel. Your MC today is Dr. Roger Neal. He's the Program Lead, Strategy and Policy of the Next Generation Technologies Fund. Making up our panel today, if you'd like to come up, you're more than welcome to. We have, first here, closest to me, is David Levy. He's the Managing Director of Tectonica. You might have heard the Minister mention that company, which was great. Then also we have Professor Anthony Finn. He's from the University of South Australia. All of these people are somehow involved in the first Grand Challenge, which was countering improvised threats, which began earlier this year. Then we have Dr. Kathy Foley. She's from the CSIRO. She's the chief scientist. And we have Olaf Reinhold. He is the program lead of the Countering Improvised Threats First Grand Challenge. So, first of all, Dr. Neal is going to give you a quick run-through on what the Next Generation Technologies Fund is, very quick. And then we'll have a few questions with our panel members. And then we'd like you to ask some questions, any questions you like. Okay, so, Dr. Neal, please come up.
If I go down arrow, something will happen. Oh, look at that, it worked. So I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present you. My aim is to spend about 10 minutes just chatting about the Next Gen Tech Fund by way of introduction, and then we'll launch into our little panel discussion. My starting thing I'd like to say is that, defence white papers, from time to time defence white papers come and defence white papers go, and sometimes nothing really changes. The defence white paper sort of essentially just affirms that we're heading in the right direction and it's all systems straight ahead. But the 2016 defence white paper was a little bit different in that I think in a few areas it really genuinely reset the defence domain. And one of the areas in which it genuinely reset the defence domain was that it really enshrined as part of Defence Australia's national defence capability the fact that industry and academia should be a fundamental input to our defence capability. And what's more, it actually set up a process whereby the capability which comprised our academic and industry domains could work in a very effective way with defence. So we've got this model that the government set up in which the defence, the ADF essentially, and sort of the insiders, for want of a better term, the old school insiders on the left here, we could actually work more effectively with the broader innovation enterprise. It established two mechanisms whereby we could engage. One's through the Next Gen Tech Fund, which I'm going to talk about, and one is through the Defence Innovation Hub, which Joe was talking about a little while ago. And it also established this thing called the Defence Innovation Portals, which is run by CDIC. And I want to put a plug in for them because they've been wonderful. They've been wonderful to us, and as they're growing and evolving, I think that they're proving a really, really effective interface between the Next Gen Tech Fund and the broader innovation community. So for those who are in the CDIC listening in, good on you, you're doing well. Thank you. So the Next Gen Tech Fund, the white paper identified a starting set of priority topic areas for research for the Next Generation Technologies Fund. And that starting set really illustrated the fact that Australia's strategic environment has evolved in the last, over the last decades. So it includes things that, 20 years or so ago, you would have thought, why is that in there? So it includes things like cyber technologies, and it includes quantum technologies. Why would you do that 20 years ago? But now it's something that we really need to consider. So we've got, as a starting point, we've got these priority research areas which the Next Generation Technology Fund is being tasked with addressing. And in the course of the life of the program, these will be, of course, reviewed and revised and perhaps added to. So what we were tasked with by the government was setting up a framework, if you like, whereby we could support research in those priority areas. So what we've done is we've built a number of what we call collaboration vehicles. Some of those vehicles are really designed around encouraging, let's see if I can make this go backwards, designed around encouraging those priority areas to work together. So some of the collaboration vehicles are really designed around having multi-theme research programs where we really bring together complementary themes and actually have them work together to achieve a mission goal. And the others are more designed around studying specific topic areas. So things like the Grand Challenge program, which we're going to be talking about in our panel, that's really designed around multi-theme, addressing multi-theme big problems, big issues. And our first one is the Counter-Improvised Threat Grand Challenge. And, the events over the last few years have really highlighted the importance of us having a counter-improvised threats research program. We've got Defence Cooperative Research Centres. Those two programs, they're the big programs, if you like. They're designed around making very significant investments around very significant, very complex problems. So we anticipate that a typical cooperative research centre, you may make investments in the order of, say, perhaps $50 million, and that could last across 5 to 7 years. The grand challenges, we want to invest appropriately to match the problem at hand. I noticed who was it? Len, I think, mentioned Jindalee. The Jindalee, I like using it as a nice, safe example. The research that was done on Jindalee was done in the early 1970s, and we spent the equivalent in today's dollars of about $40 million on research on Jindalee, and out of that we ultimately got the Jindalee over the horizon capability. Grand challenges, that's the sort of quantum that we're talking about investing, and we believe that we can achieve Jindalees. We're setting up programs to specifically encourage university research, both within and across Australia. We're wanting to encourage universities to work together to address priority topic areas, and we're wanting to encourage Australian universities to work with our allies, so specifically initially with the United States. Strategic research program, that's designed around us addressing hard problems that we know will be of relevance into the future. We may not necessarily have a defined capability that we want today, but we know that we need capability in that domain. So cyber is an example. We know we need to have enhanced cyber defence capabilities. What the form of that takes, we're not necessarily defining at this point. And then moving further across, we believe that we can make targeted investments of a smaller scale to specifically support small business. So we've got the SBIRD program, which is really designed about building our small business cohort within Australia. And then we've got, at the end, we've got defence research accelerators. We're not proposing to build our own program, but what we want to do is to really join with other existing programs and enhance those to Defence's benefit. And finally, technology foresighting. Of course, we need to know where technology is heading and where we should be steering the ship, for want of a better term, in into the future with the Next Gen Tech Fund program. So those vehicles, have we actually used them yet? The program was only, the Next Gen Tech Fund was launched in March last year, so it's very new, but we have actually already established programs in each of those collaboration vehicles. So today we're specifically going to be addressing the Grand Challenge, Counter Revised Threats Grand Challenge, which is the first one. We've launched the Trusted Autonomous Systems CRC. We've got a range of university research programs already underway, both nationally and internationally. So we've got the university research networks are up and running. Strategic research program, there are a number of strategic research programs already underway, and you'll see there that we're working collaboratively with Data 61 in the cyber domain. SBIRD, our first SBIRD, is up and running, and Nick Beagley, who's sitting over there, we're very happy to talk to you about how successful that's been already, and we're in the process of working through the launching of the second SBIRD program, and that'll be across the decade of the Next Gen Tech Fund, that'll be about a $10 million program. And we believe we can get great return on investment within that sort of quantum amount. Accelerator program, we've partnered with CSIRO, that working through their on-prime defence accelerator program, and that's also been very, very, very successful already. And we're undertaking foresighting programs. So we've been tasked with setting up a national innovation defence enterprise. We have invested in every state, and with the one exception of Northern Territory, we've invested right across the country, and the amounts pretty much reflect the pro rata, the sort of the population size. So you can scale that if you like, change the size of the arrow, the ticks. We have not yet been able to fund into Northern Territory, but I'm sure that we will in due course. So I think there's some things missing there. Cool. So engagement, very important. This is meant to be a national partnering and engagement program across the broader innovation enterprise. Have we actually been successful in doing that? Well, we've had a range of presentations and roadshows across the country. We've had over 800 attendees at those roadshows. That's since March last year. Where we've put out calls for expressions of interest, we've had 900 proposals received, and the percentages of where those have come from are reflected there or shown with those figures. And we've been able to support already 100 research activities within the program. So it's a pretty good start, we reckon, starting from last March. So we're very excited about what we've been able to achieve. So in summary, take-home messages. This is a new approach to defence innovation research. It's an integrated approach. It's a, I hate to use the word innovative approach. It's a genuine attempt by the government and by defence to remove some of those valleys of death and to really encourage effective research to deliver on real capabilities. It is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Some of the older members of DST, including myself, I joined DST in 1988, and this is the first time something like this has actually come along, where we've got a genuine opportunity to invest really, really useful amounts of resource into a program that can engage the broader innovation enterprise. So it's really, really exciting. Some of us get really excited about this thing. And it's a way for investment to ensure that defence really remains resilient to emerging threats. Just want to say one thing I've heard twice today. I've had two people say to me, we've heard that Next Gen Tech Fund is already fully subscribed and there's no point applying to Next Gen Tech Fund. That is not the case. The Next Gen Tech Fund started small. The government, I think very astutely, funded us at a relatively low level for the first year. Our funding grows progressively, and across the decade our funding will continue to grow, and I can assure you that it is definitely going to be worth your while to keep your eyes open for opportunities for funding within the Next Gen Tech Fund. So please don't think that, you know, we've already spent the full amount. I've still got 2 minutes. I'm watching the clock. I'm ahead of time. So anyway, just one last point I'd like to make is that if we get this Next Gen Tech Fund and the Defence Innovation Enterprise in the broad, if we get it right, I'm firmly of the belief that we can actually have an influence that goes beyond just defence. And, you know, we presented to the Commonwealth Science Council last August, and the conclusion that the communique that came out of that was that the council could see that the model that we've put in place can have much broader applicability, and I'm firmly convinced that we could actually have applicability with the philosophy we've developed, the frameworks we've developed, and the approach we're adopting, that we could have much broader impact, you know, as well as really having a very, very fundamental impact to defence. So that's the introductory spiel. And as I mentioned, we're really wanting to focus in now on the Grand Challenge program. It's specifically the first one, the Counter Improvised Threats Grand Challenge. It's a program that we've got. We launched. We put the call out last April, the 26th of April 2017, and we actually launched the program, Olaf, in April this year. Yep. So it's up and running, and we just thought we'd like to have a panel discussion with some players in the program, just to derive some insights as to what worked, perhaps what we could have done better. We don't say we've done everything perfectly, and let's see how we go. Sorry. If all of the theme leaders, I think, are here. So if you have a particular interest in a particular area, I'll just leave that slide there. Encode that person's face in your memory, and then during lunch you can go and beat on them. Okay. So I think we can almost take the first question as read, as that where are you as a panel involved in the Next Gen Tech Fund? Our starting point, we'll say, is you're involved with the Grand Challenge, each of you, the Counter Improvised Threats Grand Challenge. Are any of you involved in any other programs within the Next Gen Tech Fund?
We've thrown up a couple of ideas. We were approached by companies with specific intent to transition the technologies that we've developed. I can't tell you where they are at the moment, but
okay.
Involved to that extent.
No. Yeah.
We're working up ideas.
The Grand Challenge is consuming me.
So I should point out that Olaf, I know it was mentioned, but Olaf is the Grand Challenge Project Director, so he carries the can if it doesn't work. He gets congratulated, Julie, if it does work. So good on you, Olaf.
Thanks.
All right. So what made each of you in turn what made you and your organisation really want to become part of the Grand Challenge? So I might as well start with Kathy.
Okay, so I'm at CSIRO, and we do tend to have some research that is at this early stage, low TRL level, but we really do well also at taking things all the way through to commercialisation and working particularly with industry to try and help them to be successful and deliver, particularly in the defence space. So the Grand Challenge of Improvised Explosive Devices was something which really got my interest because I had been engaged with and asked the question previously when Bob Clark was actually the chief defence scientist, and there'd been this issue of how do you actually detect things which are in plastic jugs with a little bit of a wire sticking out and activated by a mobile phone. And it's, your normal sort of detectors don't work. And being a sensor detector person, I was really, really interested in that. But also it asked for not just detection, but also countering them as well. So from our perspective, I thought well, I'm interested, so I expect everyone else to be. So we actually ran some virtual workshops across CSIRO and had people in different places all linked up, because we do have fabulous IT in our linking all our labs across the country together. And out of that came a whole lot of ideas, and we then got people to start forming up proposals, and then nurtured them through and submitted, I think, 13 different ones. We were then shortlisted for about 6 or so, and then we were successful with one. And it was something which was had a lot of positives. The first one was getting people to think creatively and collaboratively across boundaries. The second thing was also, I never cease to be amazed at how enthusiastic people are to work on something where there's a really good reason for doing it, and there's a really clear goal, and it's really, really hard. And that sort of meant that there's a cultural thing that made a difference. So I think probably don't even realise that that's a good outcome already, is that you're starting to do little things that are helping organisations change and think about things differently. And then the team that's been successful, well, they're working really, really hard, because it's a really hard question, and they've really pushed the boundaries on what is possible. And I think that's what's nice about the Grand Challenge, as you said, really push it out there to try and look for something which really would be a breakthrough if you were successful.
Cool.
What attracted, rather like Kathy, what attracted myself to the Grand Challenge was a combination of the difficulty factor associated with the detection of drones at long range, sub-pixel, acoustically quiet, combined with the fact that we had some fundamental science. My colleague had spent a sizable proportion of his youth stabbing flies with sharp needles in order to derive a neurological model of a fly, and so we could take that science and we've embodied that in real-world embedded systems so that it actually operates in real time in order to go after these. And that transition from the very fundamental through to the very practical was what really attracted me. But the opportunity, whilst doing the trials, to also undertake fundamental science, which will feed back into the program, is something that drove me.
David?
Well, for Tectonica, what's sort of I guess drew our attention to it was that it was a really well-defined problem, and I think I've got to applaud DSTG for putting something out into the marketplace that gave us a clear scenario of what the issue was and then the problem it was facing. And so, for me, that it was really interesting. And as we have a group of scientists and engineers, and really our challenge is to coalesce them around a really challenging problem and something that engages them. So first off, that's what got our attention. We've been working in the counter ID space, for quite some time, and so we'd always been thinking about how could we do this better. And this particular program gave us an opportunity to then put that forward as some of our ideas, and more importantly, it gave us also the opportunity to partner up with the University of Melbourne and to get us into a technology area that we currently didn't have the in-house knowledge, but we were able to draw upon the research community with the goal of slowly transitioning that through to solve that problem.
So when we built the Grand Challenge framework, we were really aiming to develop a platform which would be an effective way of a new way of facilitating multiple parties to work together on big defence problems. And I'll start with Olaf, because you've had to live the dream. What insights have you gleaned for how successful we've been in building that new construct?
Well, I think what we've done is we've created an innovation pipeline, as you've described before, And the Grand Challenge is just one step in that. I think it's a process of learning how to undertake innovation, be that high risk, high reward innovation, in what is probably still a fairly safe environment at an early TRL level. And it gives everybody the opportunity to play in that TRL space and really try and solve a complex problem. The Grand Challenge itself on counter-improvised threats has got 13 research streams. There are a number of sensors and effectors, and what we're trying to do is address counter-improvised threats. The integration of sensors and effectors will vary depending on what the application is. It's interesting because some people think we're building this UBA system of 13 different sensors and effectors, and it'll be one device that will save the world from counter-improvised threats. That's not really the case. What we're actually doing is we're customising that ability to integrate sensors and effectors to address a specific problem. And I think that's what the Grand Challenge is enabling us to do.
Given the time, just the last thing I really would like to ask you three, particularly, is do you actually have advice to others who might like, hopefully there'll be another Grand Challenge coming along soonish. What advice would you give to others who, do you think it's worth them being a part of the program? What advice would you give them as to, the value of it and what they should do?
Well, yes, I think it is worth being part of the program because it's a great opportunity for you to engage with other research organisations or other parts of industry to put together a proposal that addresses a key challenge for defence. And I think that what the Grant Challenges does is it enables you to focus, I think, everything, all your resources around solving a really important problem, and I think that's a great thing from an individual company perspective. But it adds, I think, as you said before, a bigger ideal. There's something a bit greater than just the sort of the job you're doing. So you do that, and it's great fun. When we were talking about innovation earlier on, and I think one of the things that for me that hasn't come out is that actually it's great fun solving hard problems. I find most people have fun doing it, and it's one of the ways which we get to retain staff. As a small business, it's often hard to compete in the world of global primes, and one of the ways you do it is have good problems for people to solve because they enjoy doing it and they stick around. And that's what the Grand Challenges provides.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'd echo that. One of the insights that for me has been a bit enlightening is when we engage with either DST or with the companies involved, is we often show them elements of both what is involved and what's peripheral to being involved in the actual solution that we've said we can deliver, and they come at it and say, "Wow, you can do that too," and it's an enlightening process for them and for us, because to us that's second nature, and we just assume that the world is as we see it. But to industry and to companies and to organisations that aren't familiar with one's work, these are completely novel ideas. And people going, "Wow, that's cool," is why are you going to do it?
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. It's probably two things. First one is in the application, not everybody wins. And so you think, well, was that a waste of time? And often people think that. What I've found is that you never waste time getting people to stop and think about hard problems. Even if they're not successful on this, they've actually got their brain working about ideas, and those ideas might be used in something else in another time. So I always think that no idea is wasted, no time like that is wasted. So even preparing any proposal is a good process in itself. Even if it doesn't necessarily have the outcome you originally hoped for, it might lead to something else, in another place somewhere. The second thing, which you actually didn't mention, was this isn't where they just throw you some money. We don't, catch some money from you guys saying, yeah, you won the prize, and then disappear, and then, 5 years later we'll come back and da-da. It's actually really interesting how you're bringing all the different teams together and everyone's sort of sharing what they're doing in order to create a platform, and also having some pretty hard-nosed regular reviewing, which is not that common in Australia because
I know we do it in our organisation with particularly some of our future science platforms. We have a lot of deep reviewing in order to look at, do you fast fail things? Do you actually bring in someone else because it got stuck? And I think that's a different way of doing research in Australia, because we do tend to just, give out grants and then wait for something magic to happen. And this is quite your engagement is quite deep and interactive, and also it's interactive across all the different players who you've funded.
Yes. We're rapidly running out of time. Just one question that came out of a comment you made. You said that it was worth making the effort to make an application, but when Karen designed the process, we tried very, very hard to make it so that small enterprises particularly could afford to make an application. We didn't want it to be
it's not onerous.
300 pages kind of thing. So did we achieve
actually,
that?
Absolutely, and that's why you were able to pull people in and get engaged, because they knew it wasn't writing a phone book. That's the first thing. The only thing was, it would have been great to have a button to press to get a PDF of the thing, because you actually put it in and never saw it again, so you couldn't remember exactly what you proposed.
We have received that feedback on about 3,000.
That was about the only feedback I could give, but it was good, because you weren't looking, you were looking for ideas and capacity to deliver on them, but you weren't necessarily looking for whether or not you've got, the stellar greatest, sort of laureate fellows need only apply type things. So, which in my case was very encouraging.
That's good. Has anyone got any questions of the panel? We've got about 3 minutes left, I think. So, if you could introduce yourself, please, and direct the question to.
My name is James Tobin, U.S. Air Force. Is there anything that either the U.S. DoD or the allies can do with helping generate future grand challenges, or even help evaluations, help maybe stream other ideas that come out of these type of events?
Do you want to start with that one, Olive?
Yes, there is. The thing that is first and foremost is this is about developing defence industry in Australia. Certainly, we've already been talking to the Joint Improvised Threat Device Organisation about investing in the Grand Challenge and contributing towards potentially future calls within the Grand Challenge. And we invite that engagement because it'll provide an opportunity to share and provide the opportunity for Australian industry to be in larger international programs. It's still a stepping stone, and particularly with the JIDO engagement, it's where there's an aspiration there to make that investment, and it'll work. I'm always open and welcome to other suggestions of collaboration. The challenge, though, is that it is for the purpose of Australian industry, and so we need to remember that. There are other overseas interests, but they're more interested in actually receiving funding from the Grand Challenge, which is obviously not what our mantra is. I think one of the aspirations that I've got in this program is that we might actually set up a framework where there's a higher level of international engagement, where we might see an overseas organisation, be that a government organisation or an overseas industry, bring a specific sensor or effector into the system activities that we're doing, and thus provide a capability that we don't necessarily have within the indigenous environment within Australia. So there are opportunities for those collaborations as well moving forward, and if we can produce a framework that becomes internationally recognisable as the baseline for how these systems are assembled and fielded, I think that would be a major coup for us as a nation, and would provide an opportunity for other countries to contribute and have access to those systems as well.
At the broader Next Gen Tech Fund level, we are keenly aware that page 32 of the Defence Industry Policy Statement says we will work with Australia's broader innovation enterprise and our allies. It specifically says that. We're keenly aware that we want to do that. We need to do that. We need to do it in a way that will work. And when we started setting up this program, it's only 18 months old in reality. Our first step was the Australian-US Multidisciplinary University Research Initiative, because we knew we could do that initially. Now we're working towards perhaps working through the Grand Challenge, and we're progressively building that capability to engage with our international partners. So it will grow. Any other?
Sorry. I think that one thing that we are potentially interested in is working with program leads from the US services, potentially to contribute to the development of MURI proposals, because then that can then potentially feed into our OSMURI program, which leverages off of your MURI program. So that's something that I don't think we've done that yet, but I think it's something that we'd be looking potentially to do.
Any other questions? We have 3 minutes. Please. All right, we've exhausted it, geez. All right, well, is that a... No? Okay. No final bids? All right, well, thank you to the panel, and thank you to all of you for coming along, and I'd like to thank you all for your participation.